The elevator jolted violently, slamming him against the wall with a thud that made every bone in his body protest. He groaned, fumbling for the emergency button while cursing every cosmic law that allowed him to be stuck here. Lights flickered, and somewhere in the shadowed corner, a soft humming filled the space. He froze, blinking at the shape that had materialized as if the universe had decided to throw in one more complication just for kicks. She was small, impossibly petite, with skin that shimmered faintly in colors he couldn't even name. Her eyes gleamed with mischief, or maybe hunger, and a sly smirk twisted her lips. "You look stressed," she said, voice smooth like melted chocolate and slightly dangerous. "Would you like something to help you relax?" He coughed. I think I'm fine. Water, maybe?" She shook her head, laughing softly, that low, melodic sound that made his stomach twist for reasons he'd normally file under. "Inappropriate. Water won't cut it. Not here. Not for you." She held up a small vial filled with a thick, pearlescent liquid. "This is better. My milk. Essential for survival." His eyes widened. "Your milk?" The word stumbled out, betraying the combination of curiosity, disbelief, and the creeping realization that this was going to get weird very fast. "Exactly," she purred. "Completely nutritious. And a little fun." Her smirk broadened, and he had the distinct feeling she was enjoying the way his face contorted at the suggestion. "You humans are so dramatic about your food." He hesitated, inching backward. I'm not sure I. Try it." She tilted the vial, letting the liquid catch the flickering light, and his brain made the mistake of noticing how her hand moved, how the subtle curves caught shadows just so. He coughed, waved his hands awkwardly, and muttered, "I'm not doing anything weird." She laughed again, the sound like a soft chime that made him flinch inappropriately. "Oh, it's weird all right. Weirdly effective." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing playfully. "It can change a few things in your body. Give you temporary enhancements." His stomach growled at exactly the wrong moment, reminding him that starvation, or maybe humiliation, was a real threat. Swallowing his pride, he snatched the vial. The moment he tipped it back, the liquid slid down his throat, creamy and oddly sweet, leaving a tingling heat that traveled straight to his fingertips. "Ah," she murmured, eyes gleaming. "You'll feel it soon." Almost immediately he felt it. The walls of the elevator no longer seemed like ordinary walls. His hands stuck where they touched, his feet clinging unnaturally. Panic surged, and he flailed, arms scraping against the panel, muttering, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." "Relax," she said, floating toward him with casual grace. "You look ridiculous. Like a human fly caught in a glitter trap." "I help." He struggled, sliding up one wall, landing halfway inverted, half in a contorted sprawl he was sure defied both gravity and human anatomy. "I can't control this." Her laughter echoed around him. "That's the fun part. You can stick to walls. For a few minutes. Very temporary, very entertaining." She leaned casually against the opposite wall, arms crossed, watching him flail like a toddler who'd discovered physics too late. "And you thought your day was bad?" He tried to regain some dignity, only for a patch of wall plant to sprout green tendrils in response to his panic. "Why is there plants?" he gasped, voice echoing oddly. "Why are they talking?" "Ah," she said with mock seriousness. "You can talk to them now. Milk perk. But only if you're desperate enough to interact." She winked. "You humans are so easily manipulated." He stared at the green, whispering leaves, flailing to communicate, accidentally bouncing off the ceiling, and nearly toppling onto her lap. She caught him with ease, smirking. "Steady now. Don't spill your stamina before you even start." "Stamina?" he sputtered, cheeks flaming red, trying not to interpret that as innuendo. He wriggled, only to find his tongue involuntarily mimicking her strange alien syllables. "What the hell? Language mimicry. Milk perk. You sound adorable when you panic." She giggled, leaning closer, her proximity magnifying every awkward effect. Honestly, you should thank me for this educational experience. He froze mid-word as his hands became glue-like, his body stuck in an increasingly absurd posture, limbs bent in directions that seemed impossible. Every attempt to escape was met with a ridiculous backfire. He slid upside down, stuck to the ceiling, bounced off the walls, occasionally landing in positions that would make any human blush or scream, or both. She floated effortlessly, calm and teasing, reaching a hand down to flick a strand of hair from his face. You humans really need to work on your flexibility. Or maybe your adaptability. She let the word hang just long enough to make his stomach churn for reasons unrelated to fear. He groaned, trapped, sticky, babbling alien noises accidentally escaping his lips, face pressed against the wall, milk dripping down his chin. I'm never drinking anything ever again. Promises, she said, smirking wickedly, are always more fun when they're broken. Besides, she reached toward him, vial in hand. Round 2 is optional, but highly recommended. The elevator lurched violently, and he was flung across the floor like a ragdoll. She caught herself midair, hovering above him with perfect grace, eyes glinting. Well, this is going to be interesting, she purred. And somewhere in the back of his mind, amid panic, embarrassment, and a deepening sense of absurdity, he realized, surviving this elevator was going to be far more complicated, and hilariously humiliating, than he'd ever imagined. He landed on the floor again, sticky and wobbling, like a human jelly trying desperately to keep its dignity intact. His chest heaved, milk dripping from his chin in glistening rivulets, and he shot her a glare that probably looked more like panic than anger. You're enjoying this way too much, he hissed, trying to scramble upright, only to stick halfway to the opposite wall. She laughed, that soft, teasing chime that made him regret ever having eyebrows. You're entertaining. And educational. Humans never quite handle enhancement well. She leaned closer, the vial in her hand catching the flickering lights, and added casually, You might want another sip? Powers upgrade. Another sip? His voice cracked in a way that made him sound like a scared child in a horror movie. I know! I can barely. You can't, she interrupted smoothly, nudging him with a finger that felt like a feather and a warning all at once. You'll thank me later. Maybe. Or at least scream appropriately. Against his better judgment, and the part of his brain screaming for self-preservation, he took the vial again. The moment the liquid slid down, a shiver ran through him like electricity in molasses. His skin tingled, his muscles stretched oddly, and the elevator suddenly felt like a playground designed specifically for chaos. He bounced off the floor as if he were a pinball in a particularly sadistic arcade machine. His limbs went every which way, flailing like noodles, and for a brief, horrifying moment, he thought he might actually have sprouted a few extra appendages. You're different, she noted with a smirk. I like this version of you. Different? He groaned, wobbling upside down, sticking to the ceiling like some kind of horrifyingly flexible insect. I look ridiculous. You look human, she said, drifting gracefully toward him. Which, in this tiny space, is charmingly awkward. She reached out, nudging his hip with a hand that seemed designed to make him question every life choice he'd ever made. Your reactions are deliciously expressive. Truly. I could watch this all day. He tried to regain control, willing his limbs to obey, but every muscle moved independently, flopping, sticking, bouncing. He flailed at the buttons, trying to call for help, only to find that the elevator's panel had grown tiny, sentient sprouts. Hello? He asked cautiously. Can you talk back? Of course. The sprouts murmured in unison, voice soft and alien. He froze, feeling like a madman in a nursery he'd never signed up for. That's great, he muttered, unsure whether to laugh or cry. The alien girl rolled her eyes at his caution. Relax. They like humans. Especially sticky, flailing ones. It makes their day. He flopped against the wall and ended up partially draped over her small shoulder, accidentally brushing his cheek against her arm. His ears burned, and he muttered something about gravity being malicious. She simply smiled, eyes glinting. Oh, it's fine. Humans tend to react like that when their body decides to misbehave. It's entertaining. Another sip, and suddenly his voice started randomly shifting into alien tonalities. He barked unintentionally in high-pitched clicks, then low rumbles, and finally something that sounded suspiciously like a seductive trill. "What the hell is happening to me?" he demanded, his words a mix of panic and embarrassment. "You're adapting," she said casually, floating upside down just to torment him. "I warned you about enhancements." Her grin widened. "And humans are hilariously dramatic when they can't control what comes out." He tried to escape, flailing, bouncing off the walls, limbs sticking in ways that defied logic. Each attempt ended in him accidentally smacking the alien girl lightly in the shoulder, thigh, or worse, somewhere he deeply regretted, only for her to laugh and tease. "Careful, you might spill more than milk next time." Stop saying things like that," he yelped, voice cracking again as he tried to regain composure. The elevator seemed to shrink with every erratic movement, his flailing becoming increasingly ridiculous. She leaned close again, brushing her hair back with a casual flick. "Oh, I'm not stopping. You're too pliable. Your reactions are intoxicating." She punctuated the last word with a wink that had him blinking furiously, trying not to think about the unintended intimacy of his stuck position. He grabbed at a button, accidentally talking to the sprouting elevator plants again, which erupted in a chorus of alien murmurs that sounded suspiciously like laughter or judgment. He stumbled, slipped, and ended up dangling upside down again, legs wrapped awkwardly around the ceiling bar, arms flailing like a frantic puppet. "You know," she said, floating beside him, hands on her hips, "humans really should work on stamina. You're quite resilient when cornered. Or sticky. Or both." Her tone carried a deliberate undertone that made him choke on nothing in particular, blushing furiously. He wriggled, kicked, slipped, bounced, and somehow ended up back against the ceiling panel, one leg sticking to a sprouting tendril, his face pressed awkwardly toward her chest, which made him panic in ways he had no words for. She tilted her head, smiling with amusement, and murmured, "Oh, I think you're going to survive just fine. But surviving elegantly? That's another story entirely." And as the elevator shuddered again, sending them both tumbling through their tiny, chaotic arena, he realized that his day wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about surviving with dignity, which, judging by his current posture and the milk-induced powers, was hopelessly lost. Another sip, and the world tilted sideways, upside down, and occasionally sideways again. His muscles stretched like overcooked pasta, limbs bending in directions that made him question basic human anatomy. He bounced lightly off the walls, then stuck to the ceiling with one hand while his legs twitched like alien antennae. The alien girl floated nearby, arms crossed, smirking like she had front-row seats to the most absurd circus ever performed. "You're improving," she teased. "Sort of. But you're still laughably human," he groaned, wobbling precariously on a sticky wall patch. "Improving? I look like I've been tortured by physics." "You look delightful," she replied, voice dripping mockery and something that felt suspiciously like flirtation. "Especially the part where your body doesn't do what you want it to. Humans are so expressive under pressure." She leaned forward, brushing a fingertip along his arm, and he yelped, flailing in surprise. "Delightful," she repeated, eyes glinting. He attempted to concentrate, willing his limbs to obey, but instead his voice suddenly slipped into alien tones again, high trills, low rumbles, squeaks that sounded vaguely seductive, and a strange melodic gurgle that might have been a mating call. He panicked, trying to speak normally. I'm talking like a what is happening?" "Adaptation," she said smoothly, floating upside down. "Milk effect. Temporary. Hilarious. And educational." Her smirk widened. "You humans are remarkably pliable. Not in the most dignified way, but pliable nonetheless. He kicked at a wall button, accidentally activating a sprout of sentient elevator plant life that wriggled toward him like it had opinions. "Stop! I'm not negotiating with plants!" he shouted, flailing, only to find himself spinning mid-air, bouncing off sticky panels, accidentally bumping against the alien girl's shoulder. She giggled. "Careful, or you might spill more than milk this time." He froze, face heating red-hot. "Stop saying things like that!" The words came out in a combination of panic and involuntary alien clicks, further escalating the chaos. "Can't help it," she said, floating closer, eyes glittering. "Your reactions are intoxicating. Truly educational. I could study this all day." She wiggled a finger near his chest, and he jerked, trying not to imagine anything inappropriate as his body stubbornly contorted itself in ways that made modesty a cruel joke. Another accidental touch, another awkward flail, and he found himself stuck mid-air, one leg wrapped around a ceiling rail, arms stuck to sticky panels, and face perilously close to her chest. Get away!" he gasped, voice cracking. "You're remarkably adaptable," she said, smirking, eyes narrowing. "I like this version of you. Sticky, flailing, struggling. Very entertaining." She reached out, flicking a strand of hair from his face, brushing a finger against his cheek, and he squeaked, legs twitching involuntarily. He tried to leap toward the control panel, intending to finally open the elevator doors, but instead his sticky hands latched to a patch of sentient wall vegetation. The plants shivered, murmuring in alien tones, and his legs flopped helplessly like overripe noodles. The alien girl floated above, tilting her head. "You humans truly have a talent for accidental comedy." He wriggled, bouncing from one sticky patch to another, each motion producing unintended noises, clicks, squeaks, and an alarming trilling sound that could easily be misinterpreted as a mating call. "This is humiliating," he groaned. "And educational," she countered, floating upside down, smirk unwavering. "Humans learn best under pressure. Especially when they're flailing and exposed." She flicked his arm again, laughing softly as he yelped and bounced sideways, hitting a patch of wall plant that cooed at him in alien tones. He flopped again, head grazing her shoulder accidentally, and the elevator lurched. Milk splashed in a thin arc, dribbling down his chest. He froze, mortified, and she laughed, eyes sparkling. "See? You're thriving. Sort of. Very, publicly." He tried one last desperate maneuver, kicking off the ceiling, twisting midair, but his sticky hands betrayed him, leaving him dangling upside down, one leg tangled in the sentient wall vines, lips brushing her arm by pure accident. Please!" he gasped, embarrassed, overwhelmed by panic and absurdity. "Relax," she said, voice melodic, teasing. "You're perfect, for my amusement. And your milk-powered antics are quite the show. I may never get tired of this." She leaned closer, brushing his tangled leg lightly, and he flinched, muttering something incomprehensible in a mixture of alien clicks and human curses. He flailed again, bouncing off sticky surfaces, his arms and legs sticking in impossible ways, accidentally smacking her shoulder, thigh, and, at one point, a very unfortunate spot. She giggled, unbothered. "Careful, or you'll ruin the climax of the performance." "Don't worry, I'll guide you, gently." He groaned, eyes wide, limbs twitching in protest, trying to maintain what little dignity remained. "I'm never drinking anything, ever again." "Promises," she purred, smirking wickedly, "are most fun when broken. But I appreciate the enthusiasm. You flail beautifully." The elevator shuddered violently, lights flickering, milk sloshing over sticky panels. Both tumbled through their tiny chaos arena, limbs entangled, sticky surfaces adhering, alien plant life murmuring in what sounded like laughter. The human dangled midair, upside down, splashing milk dripping everywhere, face perilously close to the alien girl's chest. And somewhere between panic, humiliation, and absurd power-induced mutations, he realized, surviving this elevator wasn't just a question of endurance. It was a question of surviving while utterly, humiliatingly, and hilariously transformed into something entirely ridiculous, and completely at her mercy. Another sip, and something finally clicked, or unclicked, depending on how you looked at it. His limbs stopped flailing unpredictably, his sticky hands obeyed, and the bizarre trilling noises stabilized into something resembling coherent speech. He stretched experimentally, testing the temporary alien-enhanced strength, and discovered he could now stick, bounce, and even pivot with ridiculous agility. The alien girl's eyes lit up. "Ah, see? Progress. Elegance at last." She floated effortlessly, smirking. "Although your face still says panic." "I'm improving?" he muttered, glancing at his reflection in the metallic wall. His hair had adopted a faint, alien shimmer from repeated milk effects, and his eyes flickered between human and alien hues every time he blinked. He flexed, accidentally sticking to the ceiling and then sliding down like a badly greased noodle. "Improving, yes," she said, laughing. "But mostly hilarious. You're very adaptable. For a human." She tilted her head, eyes glinting with amusement. "And resilient. That's the important part." He tried to take a deep, dignified breath, only to have one sticky hand slap against a wall tendril, which immediately perked up and whispered something in alien tones that sounded like judgment. "I don't care about plants right now," he groaned, twisting midair, bouncing off the walls, sticking, sliding, and finally landing with both feet on the floor. The alien girl floated down beside him, hand reaching to flick a stray hair from his face, making him yelp and flail again. "You humans really should work on stamina. Especially when powers are involved." Her smirk carried a teasing edge, and he felt his cheeks burn in a combination of embarrassment and something far less professional. He tried to gather composure, standing tall, or as tall as a temporarily enhanced human can in a sticky, milk-soaked elevator. "All right. I think I've got a handle on this," he said, flexing experimentally. Another bounce off the wall, another accidental brush against her shoulder, and he groaned. "Never mind. I don't have a handle. Not even close." "Good," she said, eyes sparkling. "Because elegance isn't the point. Fun is. And chaos. You excel at chaos." She reached out, grazing his arm again, causing another involuntary yelp. "And let's be honest, you're a little pliable. Perfect for my purposes." He flailed a hand toward the elevator control panel, determined to escape. The sticky wall gave way under his enhanced strength, and he managed to pry the doors just enough to create a gap. Milk sloshed everywhere, dripping from his chin, chest, and hands while she hovered beside him, laughing softly. "Careful," she said teasingly. "You might spill more than milk again." "Not funny," he groaned, wriggling through the narrow opening, limbs sticking briefly to the doorframe. Another slip, another brush against her side, and he muttered something incomprehensible, half curse, half alien trill. "Relax," she said, eyes glinting with mischief. "You're doing wonderfully. I'd call it heroic, if humans could manage grace under milk-induced stress." She flicked her finger at him, just enough to make him stumble mid-escape, landing in a ridiculous, compromising pose. He blinked, mortified, as she giggled, clearly delighted by every accidental movement. He straightened, finally pushing the elevator doors fully open. Air rushed in, a faint smell of burnt circuitry mixing with the lingering sweet tang of milk. He staggered out, dripping, sticky, and glowing faintly from residual milk effects. She floated beside him, arms crossed, smirking like a cat watching a particularly foolish mouse. "You survived," she said, mock seriousness in her voice. "Congratulations. Most humans fail spectacularly. You did not. You adapted." "I survived," he panted, wiping milk from his chin, chest heaving, eyes wide. "Barely. And this is humiliating." "Humiliation is optional," she said, tilting her head. "Enjoyment mandatory." Her gaze flicked to him, teasing, playful, and dangerously intimate. "I might even consider giving you a medal." for courage. Or flexibility. Hard to tell the difference after this performance. He groaned, staggering forward, attempting to regain dignity, but every movement reminded him of the sticky walls, the plants, the bouncing, the milk, and most prominently, her teasing presence. Next time, maybe just water? She laughed, that low melodic chime that made him flinch for entirely inappropriate reasons. Where's the fun in that? She purred, tilting the vial in her hand, residual milk catching the light like liquid pearls. Her smirk was both victorious and teasing, a promise of more absurdity in their future encounters. He shook his head, exhausted, sticky, and still slightly glowing from the milk-induced chaos, muttering something about never trusting alien beverages again. She reached out, brushing a stray drop from his shoulder, and he flinched instinctively, half expecting a new effect. Instead, she just smiled. You've earned your survival. And your education. Though judging by your expression, you might argue you're more traumatized than anything else. He stared at her, muscles trembling, milk dripping from places he didn't want to contemplate. Traumatized, yes. But alive. Somehow alive. And sticky. She giggled, leaning close, her eyes glinting with amusement and mischief. Alive, sticky, and remarkably pliable. I'd call that a win. He sank to the floor, finally letting gravity, or residual milk effects, pull him down, groaning. A very weird win, he muttered, chest heaving, still slightly glowing from alien-enhanced powers. She floated beside him, hand brushing his arm lightly, teasing, eyes sparkling. We'll call it memorable. And educational. Next time, I might even let you choose the flavor. He blinked, flinching, realizing that next time was probably inevitable, and that surviving the elevator had not been the end, it had been the beginning of something far more absurd, sticky, and hilariously adult. And as he collapsed, sticky, exhausted, and utterly humiliated in the most ridiculous way possible, he muttered, almost to himself, "Next time, maybe just water." She laughed softly, a melodic, teasing sound that echoed in the elevator shaft. Where's the fun in that?